Hey guys, today we are going to be doing something new and trying something out that I've been wanting to try for a long time, which is a art subscription box. Now there are a bunch of different companies out there, but there is one company that I've been following on social media and online now for probably a couple of years and I'm just finally getting around to it. And there is a reason for that. They had this little promotion in March, which I'll get to in a second. Now the company I decided to try is called ArtSnacks. And if you order their basic subscription box, it looks like this. It is $24 a month and it comes with 4 to 5 art supplies inside, and it does not include any sort of paper or surface to work on. But there is free shipping. They also have a box, which is a step up, which they call their ArtSnacks Plus box, and that has, I believe, 5 to 6 supplies, which is everything in this box, plus a couple of other supplies, as well as a drying surface. So you get some sort of pad of paper. And the paper usually matches up with whatever is in the box. So let's say this is full of watercolor supplies, they would supply you with watercolor paper. And the Plus box is $39 a month. Now, I've been kind of kicking around the idea for a while of trying these out, and I was kind of like hemming and hawing over it. Is it worth it? Is it not? I like taking my trips to the art store. I like walking around and finding random things, but I tend to gravitate towards things and buy things that I've already used and things that I'm familiar with. So I thought this would be kind of a fun way to be introduced to new supplies or new tools. The thing that finally got me to give it a go was in March, ArtSnacks was celebrating their 7-year anniversary or birthday of being in business. In honor of their birthday, if you signed up in March, whether it was the basic or the plus, you would get your monthly box. And as a thank you, you also got a collaboration box from Tombow. So you got 2 boxes for the price of 1. I found this kind of hard to pass up. I haven't used many Tombow supplies before. I figured it'd be a good way to try them out. Plus $24 for double the supplies. Seems like a kind of hard thing to say no to. So I figured, what the heck, we'll give it a try. So today I'm gonna be going through these boxes. I'm gonna see what's inside and hopefully create something fun or at least decent out of them. Without wasting any more time, let's just jump right into it. Okay, so first up will be the actual ArtSnacks box. This is what most people would receive if you don't have the Plus subscription. Here we go. And I'm already seeing the snack in ArtSnacks with the Smarties. And then you have a card that explains all the supplies that you received inside the box and how much they would cost retail if you bought each one individually. Nice presentation. Kind of nice that they don't just throw everything in the box like a big mess. What do we have in here? Ooh, oh, okay, let's get rid of this paper. First thing that I saw right away was the ArtSnacks sticker. Every month they have a new sticker of their logo and everyone is colored in differently. So this one's got cool little triangles on it. Then we have, what are these? 4 colored pencils. We've got red, orange, yellow, and green. We have a paintbrush. The reason why I was confused with the pencils is I saw the paintbrush and I was wondering if those were watercolor pencils, but it looks like they're just colored pencils. I could be wrong. We'll have a better look at those later. The brush is a Royal Langnickel watercolor brush in 1.5-inch size. It says that it's made out of soft synthetic squirrel bristles and retails for $4.19. And what's this? We have a graphite waterproof brush liner, which retails for $3.79. And this is what the brush would be for. A 10 milliliter tube of Rembrandt watercolor in dusk green. It retails for $12.95. Well, this is a great assortment of supplies. I already have a drawing in mind, so I'm going to just jump into that, and then we'll have a look at the Tombow box. Originally, my plan was to create one piece of art out of the materials in both boxes. But once I got a look at everything in all the boxes, I realized the materials probably wouldn't work all that well together. So things are kind of shot out of order. Right now, for example, I am actually using a pencil from the Tombow box, and I'll get into that a bit more when we get to that box later. Before I jump into the supplies, I just want to talk about this illustration a little bit. The idea came from using prompt words that I got over on the Inktober account on Instagram. Inktober started a 52-word prompt, so they give you a prompt a week for the next year. I jumped in about week 6, and rather than trying to catch up, I wanted to challenge myself and see if I could figure out a drawing I could create out of those 6 words. I was able to jam flight, shadow, brick, snake, balloon, and hammer together to create this one illustration. As far as supplies from the ArtSnacks box, the first up was the graphite liner. It worked well. It had a nice flexible brush nib. It gave a nice solid consistent black line. It also did not react negatively to the water when I got to the watercolor, which was great because I was so afraid it would smudge or run or do something, and it didn't do any of that. I personally just don't like brush markers when it comes to line work. I've always had the worst time trying to control them, trying to get a nice, smooth, even line. For me, it's just a preference thing. Otherwise, this marker worked really well. Personally, it's not for me. This was my first time using a Rembrandt watercolor. Normally, I would use a Winsor Newton Cotman watercolor. But I've got to say I was really happy with the Rembrandt. The color was just nice and rich, and it went down on the paper nice and smooth. I was surprised when I first put it down on a scrap piece of paper. It was a lot darker than I expected. However, it worked out really well when it came to creating shadows before I got to the colored pencils. Another product that was completely new to me was the brush. I'd never used a Royal Langnickel brush before. It seems to be a good quality brush. It was nice and sturdy. None of the bristles were falling out while I was using it, which is something that drives me nuts on cheap brushes. The bristles were soft and they held their shape well. I also like the fact that it has an acrylic handle. If you're one of those artists who are notorious for leaving your brush in water overnight or for a long period of time, this is the perfect brush for you because unlike a brush with the wood handle, it's not going to swell or crack. I will say in this box, my 2 favorite products hands down were this brush and the Rembrandt watercolor. Once I was done going through the illustration, creating shadows with the watercolor, I started playing with the colored pencils. The pencils whose name I cannot pronounce. What is it? I have no idea. They're colored pencils. They worked well. The colors were vibrant. The pencils went down on the paper pretty smooth, especially on paper that's made for colored pencils. It was a little rough on the watercolor paper. The only thing I wasn't thrilled about was the color selection. There's just really no contrast between any of them. This is where the watercolor saved me. It gave me the ability to create shadows and depth. I really wish these pencils had been watercolor pencils. It just would have been nice to have the ability to use water to kind of blend out the color more and not have so many white spaces. There were 2 art supplies used on the illustration that were not part of the box. A kneaded eraser, for obvious reasons, and a Posca pen that I used for highlights. When it came to the ArtSnacks supplies, I loved the paintbrush and the Rembrandt watercolor. I liked the colored pencils, but I still wish there were watercolor pencils, and the graphite pen, I could take it or leave it. Again, nothing wrong with a pen, it's just personal preference. As for the illustration itself, I love how it turned out, and I have this weird desire to try it again in either acrylic, paint, or gouache. Before we jump into the Tombow box, here's a look at the full illustration. I would love to hear in the comments below how you thought it turned out. So now we have the Tombow box, and I'm so curious to see what's inside. We have another little snack in ArtSnacks style, and it looks like we have another supply menu. Then we have a little message from ArtSnacks and Tombow. Here's an info card which breaks down the new markers they are debuting in the box. I want to see. I'm not sure if this is marker paper or part of the packaging, but I'm going to assume it's marker paper since the other box didn't have anything like this. Let's just kind of roll that out for a second, or is that going to drive me nuts? Yeah, that's probably going to drive me bonkers. Maybe I'll just put the paper aside for a second. We have another neatly packed bundle of supplies. I really do like the presentation of everything. Very neat and pretty and professional. Ooh, wow, that's a lot of stuff actually. I wasn't expecting that much. Feels like Christmas. Okay, we've got a little Tombow sticker. And we have got 5 Tombow ABT Pro alcohol-based markers. They have a brush tip on one end and a chisel nib on the other. It looks like we have 5 different colors: yellow, blue, purple, green, and some sort of fuchsia. They retail for $5.49 a marker. Next up is the Tombow Mono Drawing Pen in a size 03. Typically it comes in a 3-pack set for $8.67. Last up is the Tombow Mono J Drawing Pencil in HB. It typically comes in a set of 6 and retails for $6.99. All right, another great selection of materials. Let's try them out. So this next project became a frustrating lesson in troubleshooting and the importance of having the right materials for the job. Before getting into the trouble I encountered, let's have a look at the pencil, the pen, and the line work. There's not a whole lot to say about the Mono J drawing pencil. At the end of the day, it's a pencil. I did compare it to my Derwent HB, and I'd say it performed about the same. The Mono J did clean up well with a kneaded eraser. Overall, I had no complaints, and you can never have too many pencils. By now you could probably tell I'm drawing a cactus. Since moving to Arizona in January, I've been taking advantage of the weather here by doing a lot of walking. And on those walks, I kept spotting this really pretty cactus. I found out that it's called a purple prickly pear. I've been wanting to paint one for a while now, so when I saw the colors in the markers, I thought they'd fit perfectly. The cactuses are green and purple with little yellow flowers. I thought I could use the green, yellow, purple, and fuchsia markers in the cactus for blending, and the blue and fuchsia marker for the background. Kind of like a night sky. I still plan to do this as a painting, but for now, I think this could be a great study to help decide on a composition for a painting later. Speaking of colors, I was thinking back to the snake illustration. I could have used a solvent to blend out the colored pencils, but I didn't have any on hand. I might go back at a later date and give it a try. I just wish that they had been watercolor pencils since I was already working with watercolors. It just would have made the whole thing a lot easier. One other side note, I'm sure you guys have noticed my arm brace. I'm okay. I've just been having trouble with my thumb and wrist. For some reason, they've been coming out of alignment in 2 places. When it happens, it hurts like hell. Lifting anything above 5 pounds hurts. Putting weight on it hurts. Being a righty, I'm just so grateful it's not my right hand. On to the Mono Drawing Pen in size 03. One thing I really liked was that the ink dried fast, so I didn't have to worry about smudging. There was also a steady flow of ink, so the lines were just nice and smooth and solid. It also has a firm nib, which I prefer when doing line work. I just find it easier to control than a brush nib. It leaves me with a clean, non-jittery, consistent looking line. If I had to choose between the Mono pen from the Tombow box or the Graphite pen from the ArtSnacks box, the Mono pen is my favorite, but it really just comes down to a personal preference. Just as a heads up, all the line work in this video and past videos are available on my Patreon account as coloring pages. Along with coloring pages, there are other benefits available as well, like early access to videos, postcards or prints of my work, monthly live Q&As, video shoutouts, t-shirts, and much more. If you'd like to learn about these benefits and help support this channel, I will leave a link to my Patreon below. Every little bit helps and is greatly appreciated. Also, if you have any ideas or suggestions on things you'd like to see as benefits, or even videos you'd like to see on this channel, please leave them in the comments below. I would love to hear them. At this point, I remember being really happy with how this illustration was turning out. And I remember thinking, 2 illustrations and no dramas. How could this be? I think this is when the marker gods started laughing at me because things went downhill really quickly from here. I'll be honest, I was really excited to give the ABT Pro alcohol-based markers a try since the only other alcohol-based marker I'd ever tried were Copics. I really wanted to see how they compared. Unfortunately, this is where the problems, frustration, and troubleshooting began. The first thing that I noticed about the ABT Pros were that they were very wet. They had a steady flow of vibrant ink. As I worked with them, I hated the way that the ink just sat on top of the paper. It felt like I was smearing or pushing around the ink. It seemed like no matter what I did, the colors looked streaky. Eventually, I decided to stop and let the ink dry so I could go over it, hoping that it would even out the color. Instead, it seemed to just reactivate the ink that was already on the paper. It was insanely frustrating. When it came to color selection, I didn't like how close the colors were in value. There was no contrast. This was really apparent when I tried to blend the blue and the fuchsia at the top of the page. You really couldn't see a difference. A little side note on the colors. I found it weird that the markers didn't have color names. They just had numbers. It's a tiny detail, but I personally enjoy having color names on my Copics, instead of a color just labeled number P757, for example. The number tells me nothing about the color, and I found that the ink didn't exactly match with the cap of the markers either. This is especially true for the fuchsia color, or, as they call it, the P757. When it came to blending, I had a hell of a time no matter what I did. When I tried to blend the green and the fuchsia on the cactus, it came out muddy and streaky. This is when I began to feel that the markers were too wet, or maybe the included paper wasn't marker paper at all. At this point, I decided to pull out some Copics in similar colors to see how they behaved on the same paper. They were horrible on the paper as well, streaky and blended horribly. This told me the problems that I was having with the ABT Pro markers were most likely paper problems and not marker problems. Just to be sure, I then tested both the Tombow and the Copics on the back of the paper that I was drawing on. The reason I did this is because sometimes I've seen marker paper where you're supposed to draw on one side and not the other. I wasn't sure if by mistake I just happened to be drawing on the wrong side. It turned out both the Tombow ABT Pro markers and the Copic markers looked horrible on the other side as well, so this is definitely not a marker issue as far as I'm concerned. It is a paper issue. So I'm going to have to try the ABT Pro markers out again as soon as this lockdown is over and I can get out to an art shop to pick up more marker paper. At some point I gave up. I had line work that I absolutely loved, but the color was just a train wreck. For the rest of the drawing, I decided to just color it in and skip the blending. With the paper, if this isn't marker paper, which I really don't think it is, why was it included? Granted, paper wasn't mentioned on the Tombow supplies card, but there wasn't any paper included in the ArtSnacks box packing. So why have it in the Tombow box if it has no apparent purpose? All things considered, I liked the pencil. I loved the mono drawing pen, and as far as the ABT Pro markers are concerned, I'll have to leave it as a to be determined. I will definitely give them another try when I have the right paper. Well, there we have it. All the supplies from the ArtSnacks and Tombow collaboration, along with the 2 pieces I was able to create with the supplies. For my first experience with an art subscription box, there are definitely some hits and misses, but I'd say it's not a bad deal for supplies that arrive at your door. And it's a fun way for you to be introduced to new supplies that you may not have tried on your own. Before I wrap up, I'd just like to send a huge thank you to all my patrons. Your support during these strange times is hugely appreciated. I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy out there. Until next time, thank you for watching, liking, and subscribing.